Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive in. Today's deep dive is all about the Mahaparinirvana Sutra.
Big one.
Yeah, it is a big one. It's essentially Buddha's last teaching, what he shared right before his passing. Think of it as like his final wisdom.
Exactly. And one of the things that makes the Mahaparinirvana Sutra so interesting is its emphasis on Buddha nature. This idea that the potential for enlightenment is actually within everyone.
Okay, so it's like built in. We've got it in us already.
Exactly. It's not something you have to go out and get. It's there.
Okay, so then what's the sutra say about how we access this like inner Buddha nature?
Well, the sutra, it paints this really vivid picture of Buddha's disciples, like really struggling with his impending death. And, they're overcome with grief and they're pleading with him to stay. They're offering him all these extravagant offerings. Imagine the Lichavis. They were a wealthy clan. They arrived with 84,000 elephants, all decked out in jewels.
84,000.
84,000 elephants each carrying these wagons overflowing with treasures. It's a really striking image.
That's a lot of elephants.
Yeah.
So, okay, are they trying to bribe him to stay? What's the...
They're trying to show their devotion.
Okay.
They're really clinging to his physical presence.
Okay, so I'm sensing a but coming.
But the sutra is saying that true enlightenment, it's not about amassing external wealth or even clinging to a teacher, even the most revered teacher, like the Buddha.
More internal.
Exactly.
Okay.
The sutra uses this powerful metaphor to illustrate this point. It talks about an intoxicated man mistaking stillness for movement.
Okay.
Imagine his confusion, his inability to perceive reality accurately.
Mm-hmm.
The sutra suggests that, oftentimes our usual state of mind is a lot like this intoxicated man's, clouded by illusions and misperceptions. And these illusions, they obscure our true nature. They obscure our Buddha nature.
Wow. Okay, so it's kind of like we're walking around, we think we see things clearly, but maybe we don't.
Exactly. We might be seeing a distorted version of reality. We might be missing the mark completely.
Like we're all a little bit spiritually intoxicated.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the sutra goes on to actually outline 4 common inversions or misperceptions that really feed this intoxication. These inversions are mistaking suffering for bliss, impermanence for eternity, the non-self for self, and impurity for purity.
Okay, so 4 big ones to watch out for.
4 big ones. Very tricky.
Yeah, and they do sound tricky, especially that first one. Like, how do you even begin to mistake suffering for bliss?
It's easier than you think. Let's take the example of clinging to social media for validation. It's like chasing those likes and comments as if they're going to bring you lasting happiness.
Right, which they never do. It's like a quick hit, and then you need more.
Exactly. The sutra would say you're mistaking that fleeting sense of satisfaction, that quick hit, for something real, something lasting.
When really it's like empty calories.
Exactly.
Empty calories. Okay, so then what about impermanence for eternity? How do we mix those two up?
Well, it's like clinging to that carefully curated online persona, believing it to be a true reflection of the self. We treat it as if it's permanent.
And when it inevitably changes, or we don't get the likes or that comment we were hoping for, then what? We feel anxious, lost.
Exactly. The sutra reminds us that clinging to anything impermanent, whether it's that online persona or anything else in the external world, it's ultimately a recipe for suffering.
It's like building your house on sand.
Exactly. It's not going to last.
Okay, so these inversions, they sound like important pitfalls to watch out for. But how do we know if we're falling into them? Like, are there warning signs?
The sutra uses this analogy of the milk medicine to really highlight the dangers of clinging to these false views. Imagine a doctor, right, prescribing milk as a cure-all.
Okay.
But instead of healing the patient, the milk actually worsens their condition.
So it's like a misdiagnosis.
Exactly. It's about recognizing when something we think is helpful, something we're clinging to, might actually be causing us more harm than good.
So how do we know if we're drinking the milk medicine?
That's the question, isn't it? And the sutra invites us to look closely at our attachments, our beliefs, our habits, and ask ourselves, are these truly serving us? Or are they keeping us trapped in a cycle of suffering?
So it's about paying attention, being honest with ourselves.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a discerning mind.
That's helpful. A discerning mind. I like that. Okay, so the milk medicine. It's like a good analogy for these false views.
Yeah.
It makes me think about something else I was kind of wrestling with as I was reading the sutra. On one hand, it's talking about this eternal nature of Buddha nature, right? This potential that's always there. But then it also stresses the impermanence of all things. So how do those two ideas work together?
That's a really insightful observation, and it gets to the heart of the sutra's depth. So it actually addresses this seeming paradox by distinguishing between what it calls conventional truth and ultimate truth.
Okay, two different kinds of truth.
Yeah, think of conventional truth as like Buddhism 101.
Yeah.
It's the teachings that we encounter maybe at the beginning of our understanding. Basic concepts and examples that we can relate to our everyday experience. They're helpful for, guiding us toward ethical living, but ultimate truth, that goes deeper.
Next level stuff.
Exactly. It dives into the nature of reality itself, and it requires deeper contemplation.
So Buddha's using different approaches, kind of like, we wouldn't teach algebra to someone who's just learning to count, right?
Precisely. The sutra actually highlights how the Buddha really skillfully tailored his teachings to meet people where they were at. So sometimes he used metaphors,
Right.
stories, sometimes even like seemingly contradictory statements.
Wow. Okay.
And it was all skillful means to lead people, toward a more profound understanding of reality.
Like he's speaking different languages depending on who he's talking to.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. And, speaking of different languages, I was thinking about some of the imagery that's used in the sutra. And I was particularly struck by that analogy of sparks flying from heated iron, where the sparks appear for a moment and then they vanish. Such a vivid image of impermanence.
Yeah. It's a powerful one. And the sutra uses other imagery too, like the sweeping of stars. So once the stars are swept away, there's no trace left.
Right.
Both of these metaphors, they point towards a really central tenet in Mahayana Buddhism. Emptiness, also known as shunyata.
Emptiness. I'll be honest, that one's always kind of tripped me up.
Yeah.
It can feel, I don't know, a little intimidating.
Yeah.
Maybe even a bit bleak, like it suggests that nothing really matters.
It's completely understandable to feel that way. The concept of emptiness, it can seem daunting, even a bit unsettling at first. But it's crucial to remember that emptiness, it doesn't equate to nothingness.
Okay, so it's not about things not existing. It's more nuanced than that.
Much more nuanced. Emptiness points to the interconnected and impermanent nature of reality. So, to maybe understand this a little better, think about a wooden chair.
Okay, a chair.
Right, so it's chairness. It's empty of inherent existence.
Okay.
It exists as a chair because of the wood, because of the carpenter's craftsmanship, and because we perceive it as a chair.
Right.
But if we were to break it down to its basic elements, that chairness would disappear, right?
Yeah.
So emptiness isn't about things not existing, but rather understanding that their existence is dependent on causes and conditions.
So their existence is conditional, it's fluid, it's always changing. I'm starting to get it a little bit. And that actually, I don't know, is kind of freeing in a way.
Yeah.
To think that everything is in flux, maybe there's a little less to grasp onto, a little less to cause suffering.
That is a really great insight, and that's where these metaphors become so powerful. They give us a glimpse into these complex ideas, but it's important to remember they're really just entry points.
Right.
Even Buddha's own disciples, they struggled with these teachings at times.
They did.
Oh, yeah. The sutra itself reflects this, this ongoing process of learning, of questioning, and of deepening our understanding. It's not about instant enlightenment.
Right.
It's about this journey of uncovering our own Buddha nature. And it happens layer by layer.
Layer by layer. Okay. So we're peeling back these layers of illusion, right? Understanding that everything's interconnected, everything's in constant flux. This is helpful. It's a lot, but it's helpful. But how do we actually, live with this understanding? Does the sutra offer like any practical advice on that? About not getting so caught up in these sixth sense fields or robbers we talked about. So we're peeling back these layers of illusion, right? Understand that everything's interconnected, everything's in constant flux. This is helpful. It's a lot, but it's helpful. But how do we actually, live with this understanding? Does the sutra offer like any practical advice on that? About not getting so caught up in these sixth sense fields or robbers we talked about?
Oh, absolutely it does. The sutra, it emphasizes practical steps we can take.
Okay, good. Like what?
Like carefully guarding our senses. Remember those 6 robbers?
Always lurking.
Always trying to distract us. It also stresses cultivating loving kindness.
Even towards those who, maybe aren't so kind to us.
Especially towards them. And then also recognizing the pitfalls of craving and clinging.
So it's about cultivating a mindful awareness, choosing where we direct our attention, being thoughtful about how we respond to the world around us.
Got it. And these practices, they directly connect to what's known as the Noble Eightfold Path in Buddhism,
Right. Okay.
which is essentially a framework for ethical conduct, for mental discipline, and for wisdom. It's a guide for aligning our thoughts, our speech, our actions with this understanding of interconnectedness and impermanence that we've been talking about.
So it brings it all together.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes it feel a lot more, I don't know, tangible and practical.
Yeah.
It's not just like this lofty philosophical concept, but it's about how we actually embody these ideas in our everyday lives.
Exactly. And the sutra uses these really captivating stories to kind of bring these ideas to life. Like, remember that story of the king
Oh, yeah?
who was consumed by existential anxieties?
Yeah. Yeah. He just wanted to find some peace of mind.
Exactly. He desperately wanted a cure, a way to find that peace amidst all the uncertainty of life.
Oh, I felt that one. Who hasn't felt that? That like wave of anxiety about the future, the fear of loss, that deep yearning for something more.
Yeah, it's a universal human experience. And
Yeah.
the sutra connects this very human experience to the Four Noble Truths,
Yep.
which, are really the foundation of Buddhist thought. These truths explain the reality of suffering, its cause, the possibility of liberation, and the path to achieve it.
And that path is open to everyone, right?
Right.
Even that king who's like super caught up in his anxieties.
Exactly. Even in these final teachings, the sutra emphasizes that this path is open to all beings.
That's a hopeful message.
Yeah.
Even with the natural cycle of life and death, there's still this potential for like awakening and liberation from suffering.
Absolutely.
This has been amazing. I feel, I don't know, inspired,
Yeah.
and definitely want to like keep exploring these teachings.
That's the beauty of it. The sutra isn't meant to be passively absorbed, but it's meant to be actively explored.
Yeah.
So question, reflect, apply these insights to your own life, and keep that exploration going.
A lifelong deep dive.
Exactly. A lifelong deep dive.
I like it. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Mahaparinirvana Sutra.
It's been a pleasure.
And all of you listening, thanks for being here. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.